My name is Emily Moore. My daughter, Isabella, was 12 when she was in a car accident, resulting in her becoming deaf. The doctor said there was nothing physically wrong, but she stopped reacting to our words. A year after the accident, my husband said something unimaginable. "That failure is not my daughter. You take care of her by yourself." My husband thrust a divorce paper at me, with his name already signed. I was momentarily stunned. Surely, we don't need to divorce. It's not Isabella's fault, it was an accident. I've reached my limit. My daughter has to be outstanding. I can't bear the shame of having such a defective child as my daughter. How can you say such things? She is our child. That's exactly why I can't stand it. I can't deal with you two anymore. My husband is 2 years older than me. We met through a mutual acquaintance. He graduated from a prestigious private university and was top of his class. He holds a senior position in a major corporation, having followed a path of elite success. He was also very involved in our daughter's education, enrolling her in private schools since kindergarten and overseeing her studies. With his guidance, she was always among the top 3 in her class. But after the accident, she lost interest in studying, and her grades dropped significantly. My husband, a perfectionist, couldn't tolerate our daughter's academic struggles. However, getting divorced now would be difficult for me. As a stay-at-home mom, I had no savings to raise our daughter on my own. Can't you reconsider the divorce? If you leave us now, how are we supposed to live? That's not my problem. I'll pay child support, of course, so you should just find a part-time job and earn some money. It's time for you to face the consequences of relying on my income all this time. I never chose to be a housewife willingly. I had a career before, but I quit my job following my husband's wishes. He wanted his wife to be a homemaker, focused solely on household responsibilities. Though I wanted to work, I quit my job after persuasion from my parents-in-law. However, it seems my husband has completely forgotten about that time. I wanted to argue back, but I knew it would only lead to more fighting. Still, I tried my best to avoid divorce. If you want me to work, I will, but can we please not divorce? It would be a shock for Isabella to suddenly lose her father. To me, you two are just burdens. A deaf child is nothing but trash. How can you call your own daughter trash? During this exchange, our daughter came to us. She looked at us sadly. Then my husband approached her and whispered something horrendous in her ear. "Becoming such a defective girl. You should never have been born. You raised my hopes and then betrayed them." "What are you saying?" I screamed, but he continued. "She's defective and deaf, so it doesn't matter what I say. She can't hear anyway. Still, it's cruel to call your own daughter defective. The one who should feel sorry is me. I had expectations for her, spent money on her, and it all went to waste. I wish I could have all that money back." Don't you have any feelings for Isabella? Why would I? Who wants to be with a disgusting, defective child? Take this daughter, she's yours now. Seeing my husband's attitude, I made up my mind. Staying with him would only bring us more unhappiness. I have to protect my daughter. I glared at my husband, who was laughing vulgarly in front of me. What's with that look? Got something to say? No, I have nothing more to say. I'll raise her by myself. As I said this, my husband's face lit up with a pleased smile. It was clear he had no more love for us. Then sign the divorce papers. All right. He handed me the pen, and I signed the divorce papers. I never imagined my marriage would end so abruptly, but I had no regrets. At that moment, I was only thinking about my daughter's happiness. The next day, my husband left with only the essentials. The apartment was in his name, so I started looking for a new place to live. When I told my parents about the divorce, they said they would support us for a while. But I couldn't rely on my parents forever. Soon after we started living just the two of us, I began job hunting and eventually found a full-time position. Gradually, my daughter began to smile more. Perhaps life with her father had been stifling. I regretted not ending the marriage with my ex-husband sooner. About 6 months after the divorce, a shocking truth came to light. One day, while I was doing housework, my daughter grabbed my clothes. "What's wrong?" I could tell she wanted to have an important conversation. After finishing the chores, we sat down in the living room to talk. We usually used paper and pen to communicate. But when I offered her the notebook, she shook her head vigorously. "What's wrong, Mom?" I couldn't believe my ears. My daughter hadn't spoken a word since the accident. But it was indeed her voice. "Isabella, you can speak." She nodded slightly. It seemed my voice reached her. "Did you suddenly start hearing again?" She shook her head. After a pause, she began to slowly reveal a truth she had been hiding. "The truth is, I didn't really lose my hearing in the accident. I've just been pretending not to hear all this time." "Is that so? Why did you lie about it?" My daughter began to cry, clearly recalling painful memories. I gently rubbed her back. "You don't have to talk about it if it's too hard for you." "It's okay. Dad's constant pressure to study was too much for me. I couldn't tell you, Mom, but whenever my grades dropped even a little, he would hit me." "What?" Then my daughter took off her jacket, revealing scars on her back. Apparently, these were from my husband hitting her. Thinking back, Isabella had suddenly started refusing to bathe with me. She must have been trying to hide her injuries. She had been threatened by my ex-husband not to tell anyone about the wounds. Seeing her tears, I was filled with anger towards him. But there was nothing I could do now. I felt incredibly frustrated. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize. You've been suffering so much all this time," I said, hugging her gently. She continued to cry for a while, likely holding back her feelings for a long time. Once she calmed down, my daughter spoke with determination. "I refuse to be defeated by Dad. I'll get into a better university and work at a better company than him. I want to prove him wrong." Her eyes were filled with a fighting spirit. My daughter had been pretending to get lower grades while living with my ex-husband, but in reality, she had been studying secretly. As her mother, I naturally intended to support her if she was motivated. I decided to firmly support my daughter going forward. "I'm always on your side, Isabella. If you want to work hard at something, I think you should go for it." Saying this, I held her hands. My daughter smiled happily. "I knew you'd say that, Mom. I'm glad to be your daughter." Her words made me so happy I almost cried. I'm truly blessed to have her as my daughter. Even without a partner, having my daughter by my side was enough for me. Afterward, I explained my daughter's hearing situation to my parents and her school teachers. My parents understood her desire to work hard at her studies and offered financial support. Her teachers, understanding the situation, promised to pay more attention to her. We had many people around us offering support, which was a great help. My daughter then worked hard and got accepted into the top-ranked school in our county as the top student. Considering our family circumstances, she chose a public high school. She continued to excel in high school, maintaining top grades. Though there were times when her grades slipped or she struggled, she remained positive. She expressed a desire to work in a field related to English and aimed for the foreign languages department in college. After persistent efforts, she successfully got accepted into the college she aspired to, which was also the one my ex-husband had failed to get into. My daughter was overjoyed at her acceptance. "With this, if you can get a job at a better company than him, you'll have surpassed him. Isabella, you've worked so hard. Your efforts are truly amazing. I could do it because you supported me, Mom. Thanks for cheering me on all this time. Of course. You are my precious daughter, after all." Hearing this, Isabella smiled brightly. I am so happy she is my daughter. I wanted to continue protecting her smile. In college, my daughter maintained top grades and eventually graduated as the valedictorian, receiving awards for her academic excellence. After graduation, she landed a job at a major multinational corporation. As an adult, she began living independently. One ordinary day, unexpectedly, he showed up. My ex-husband. He came during a long vacation, apparently having tracked us down specifically to visit. It had been 10 years since I last saw him. Naturally, he had aged and put on quite a bit of weight. He must have been leading an unhealthy lifestyle. His clothes were pilled and his hair unkempt. "It's been a long time," he said, scratching his head and smiling awkwardly. "What do you want, showing up out of the blue like this? We're strangers now." I responded, without a smile, my expression cold. Don't be so cold. I came all this way to see you. I didn't ask you to come. What do you want? Actually, I heard some rumors about Isabella. Isabella? Just then, my daughter appeared beside us. Likely having heard us talking. As soon as he saw her, my ex-husband's eyes welled up with tears, and he walked towards her. You've done well. Impressive. I heard you're making quite a name for yourself at the company. My ex-husband said, embracing Isabella. However, my daughter clearly looked uncomfortable. Who are you? I'm going to call the police, she said in a cold voice, pulling away from him. Her eyes were as cold as ice. Seeing this, my ex-husband looked somewhat sad. I'm your father, you haven't forgotten, have you? I don't have a father. My only parent is my mom. Why come back now after you abandoned us? I was wrong back then. I didn't understand you properly. Apparently, my ex-husband had heard about Isabella from a contact working in a multinational company. Her remarkable achievements had become the talk of various companies, reaching my ex-husband's ears. He also learned that my daughter could hear. But he didn't seem to know that she had been pretending not to hear. When did your hearing get better? I could always hear. I just pretended not to because I disliked you. My ex-husband was taken aback by her revelation. Clearly unsettled. Is that true? Yes. So I remember everything you said to me when you and Mom got divorced. You called me defective, remember? That. My ex-husband fell silent, unable to respond. It seemed he hadn't forgotten those times either. Then he deeply apologized to my daughter. Can't you forgive and forget the past? I've been reflecting. I was terrible to you back then. It was all my fault. My ex-husband, with tears in his voice, offered his apologies. But even seeing him like this, I couldn't forgive him. He was the one who had made our daughter suffer. It seemed Isabella felt the same way. You betrayed Mom too, right? How can I forgive you just because you apologize now? I don't ever want to see your face again, so please leave. My daughter coldly rejected him. She then hid behind me, putting distance between herself and my ex-husband. She's made herself clear. Can you please leave now? You don't belong here. I came here wanting to start over with you too. Living alone is too hard. How about we get married again and live as a family of 3? My ex-husband's ridiculous suggestion left me dumbfounded. Besides, I had a reason why I couldn't get back together with him. Sorry, but I can't start over with you. Please give up. Don't say that. I think we can make it work now. I won't be harsh on Isabella like I was 10 years ago, and I'll be kind to you. He deeply apologized to us. I decided to inform my ex-husband, who was oblivious to a crucial fact. Actually, I got remarried 3 years ago. Remarried? My ex-husband exclaimed in shock. It had been 10 years since our divorce. It wasn't strange for me to have remarried. But he seemed overly surprised. You got remarried? It's been 10 years since our divorce. It's not that surprising, is it? And you didn't notice the wedding ring on my finger? I showed him the ring on my left hand. Apparently, he hadn't noticed it, being too engrossed in the conversation. We deliberately didn't put up a nameplate at our house, which is probably why he didn't realize it. 2 years ago, I married a man 2 years older than me whom I met at work. He's a great father who cares deeply for my daughter. It seems she is quite fond of him too. We were living many times happier than when we were with my ex-husband. My ex-husband seemed quite shocked to learn about my remarriage. Why would you marry someone else when I'm still around? We're divorced, so I'm free to live my life however I want. We're strangers now, aren't we? Then, my daughter spoke up. You have the nerve to come back after cheating on Mom and leaving us. She muttered this to my ex-husband. And I could see him visibly pale. What are you talking about? I never cheated. Remember when I said I was pretending to be deaf? I heard you clearly on the phone with your mistress. You divorced Mom because you wanted to be with her, right? I guess you're here because you've broken up with her now. Truth be told, I hadn't known about my ex-husband's affair until my daughter told me. After the accident, he had blatantly talked to his mistress in front of my daughter. He used to leave home often back then. Probably to meet her. Later, I found out he had been cheating with a younger woman he met at a nightclub and married her after our divorce. He must have loved her more than us. I could have demanded compensation for his cheating, but I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I was wrong to cheat. But I promise I won't betray you two again. Look, I'm already remarried, okay? Even if you apologize, there's no way we can get back together. Despite my words, it seemed my ex-husband wasn't ready to give up. He must have had some pressing reasons to want to reconcile with us so desperately. Then, without being asked, my ex-husband began to talk about what happened after our divorce. I broke up with her 2 years ago. Her? The woman you had an affair with? Yeah. Apparently, his mistress at the time was 29 years old. 16 years younger than him. After marrying her, they didn't have any children and lived together as a couple. She quit her job to become a housewife, but soon started neglecting household chores and pushing them onto him. She also got into host clubbing, spending his money recklessly. When he confronted her, she would explode in anger. Her parents even came to blame him, making him weary of the marriage. He struggled to get a divorce due to strong opposition from her parents, but finally managed to after she cheated on him with another man. It seems he didn't demand any alimony. After the breakup, I became distrustful of women and lost my focus at work. Then I made a big mistake at the company. A few months after their split, he was fired from his job. I was surprised to hear how drastically his life had changed. So, what are you doing now? I managed to find another job, but my salary has been cut in half. Even if it's half, you were earning well before. That should be enough to live on your own, right? Well, about that. He seemed hesitant to say more. It was irrelevant to me, but he continued talking. I've recently fallen into gambling due to stress. I have about $60,000 in debt now. Before marrying me, my ex-husband had a phase where he was addicted to gambling. He quit for our marriage. My ex-husband always had a habit of overspending when stressed. Even during our marriage, he once came home with a shopping spree worth nearly $6,000 after a bad day at work. It seems his character hasn't changed. You're not expecting me to pay off your debts, are you? But since you're living in such a nice house, you must have some money, right? I'm not asking to get back together, just lend me some money, please. He begged me. I was speechless at how far he had fallen. Of course, I had no intention of lending him any money. Thanks to my current husband, we were comfortable, but I had no money to waste on my good-for-nothing ex-husband. Why don't you borrow from a consumer finance company or even a loan shark? I've already borrowed up to the limit from those places, and they've said no more loans. And I can't afford to increase my debt anymore. With my current job, I don't see any pay raise in the future. My ex-husband seemed reluctant to leave. Irritated, I began to lose patience. Can you stop already? We have plans to go out as a family of 3. My husband is coming home soon, so it's better for you to leave now. Just promise to lend me the money, and I'll go right away. He grasped my hands. Don't touch me. I shook off his hands forcefully. He looked at me with tearful eyes. Why? You're being persistent. We have our own lives. If you keep insisting on staying, I will really call the police. You're so harsh. The man who used to boss me around was nowhere to be seen. Seeing my ex-husband break down in tears, I couldn't help but wonder why I ever married him. I couldn't see any redeeming qualities in him from my current perspective. As we were having this exchange, my husband came home. He frowned at the sight of my ex-husband sobbing at the entrance. I had shown my husband a picture of my ex before. And since he's good at remembering faces, he immediately recognized him. What are you doing here? My husband asked in a cold voice. You are. I'm Emily's husband. Tall and with handsome, actor-like features. My husband looked quite the opposite of my ex, who seemed a bit jealous. Do you need something from my wife and daughter? They seem bothered by you, so please leave. But I still have things to discuss. Like what? Well, I'm a bit short on cash. That has nothing to do with my wife. You're just in trouble because of your own actions, so please don't involve her. My ex-husband looked annoyed. But my husband stood firm. If you continue to disturb us, I'll call the police immediately. We're close to the station, and I know some officers who can come quickly. My ex then turned a pleading look towards me. You've always wanted to get back with me, right? What? What are you talking about? You didn't want to divorce me back then. I'm thinking of taking good care of both of you from now on. So, as my ex-husband desperately sought reconciliation, my daughter spoke up. You should take a look at your own unsightly figure before you talk. Who would want to live with a dirty, obese man like you? Our current dad is handsome and kind, and we're proud of him. Maybe you should try to dress more like him. If both your appearance and character are rotten, nobody will want to be around you. Her words seemed to deeply wound him as he began to cry. Please leave now. We're going out for dinner, the three of us. You really won't give us another chance? Don't be ridiculous. Who would want to get back with an unhygienic, broke man like you? Talk such nonsense in your dreams. I see. All right. Resigned and dejected, my ex turned away and left. After this, we never saw him again. After my ex left, we went to the upscale restaurant we had planned on. It was a really happy time, enjoying a leisurely meal together as a family of three for the first time in a while. From what I heard through acquaintances, my ex-husband continued his unhealthy lifestyle and eventually developed diabetes. His condition became serious, and he had to be hospitalized. Since then, he had to quit his job and is struggling to pay his hospital bills while dealing with debt. After our divorce, he was estranged from his relatives, and his parents had already passed away, so he had no one to turn to. He never maintained any close friendships, so no one visits him in the hospital, and he's fighting his illness alone. It's a harsh reality, but he might end his life in loneliness. I have no sympathy for him. It might sound cruel, but I think he should endure the loneliness he deserves for making our daughter suffer. Meanwhile, my daughter continues to excel at her job, earning recognition and handling important tasks. She's also in a relationship with a man she met after becoming a working adult. She seems to be considering marriage with him. I've met him. He's a genuinely nice young man who always greets us cheerfully, and both my husband and I like him. Moving forward, I plan to enjoy my life while I wish for my daughter's happiness.